It's been a while, Remedy. It's been too long. So for those of you unaware, Remedy's games are not only some of my all-time favorites, but they also hold a very special place in my heart now in regards to this channel. Back in 2019, I felt stuck. I felt like the channel wasn't going anywhere, and I decided I needed to make a change in the content I create. So I decided to try my hand at retrospectives. I'd always enjoyed more critique or long form content, and I thought if I was going to change the channel's direction, it had to be something I would thoroughly enjoy, and what better way to do that than by revisiting games I know I already enjoy. This led to me making my very first retrospective, which I uploaded in July 2019, and the game I decided to cover was Alan Wake. Alan Wake is a truly special game. I mean, it's easily one of my favorite games of all time, and it was also a game at the time I believed had been unfairly forgotten and needed more attention. A lot has changed since then though. There were little to no talks of a sequel. Remedy were about to release their second new IP since the release of Alan Wake, and I'd started to lose hope of ever seeing a sequel. Well, now in 2022, we've had heavy Alan Wake information in the base game for Control, a DLC dedicated to him, and expanding this world. And, oh yeah, a goddamn trailer confirming that Alan Wake 2 is finally happening. Needless to say, I'm a big fan of Alan Wake, and any excuse to head back to Bright Falls, and I'll take it. Playing the game for the first time on a PlayStation console sounded like as good an excuse as any, and even though it took me a couple of months, well, here we are. So, now that I finally played Alan Wake Remastered, what did I think? Firstly, as I've already stated, I have a nice chunky video diving deep into all that Alan Wake goodness, even if it is a bit old at this point. So I'm not going to be going over all of that again. If you're interested, click the link in the top right hand corner or the description below for that video. But instead, what I wanted to talk about in regards to this remaster is mainly the visual changes, as the story and gameplay is, well, the same as before, and also because in my mind, Alan Wake was a pretty damn good looking game when I last played it, so is this a worthwhile reason for fans of the game to come back and reinvest in Alan Wake? First things first, I want to address those damn nostalgia goggles, because when I booted up the remaster for the first time, I was sort of like, isn't this just what it looked like before? We all have those moments, right? I mean, hell, back when Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary released, I even remember thinking that, only to be shocked at just how different it all looked at the press of a button. Obviously, I noticed the change to the character models right off the bat, but what I'm more so talking about is the environments and the visuals through gameplay. I think I'd only gotten through the prologue or tutorial before I just had to know if my memory was correct or if I was getting haloed all over again. And of course, that was exactly what had happened. The remaster is so much more clear, and whilst, objects, weapons, fauna, character models, all that good stuff is noticeably improved, just being in these environments and looking across the vast expanses of forest is so damn beautiful. I mean, look at this opening on the ferry now. Look at that water, or the cabin on Cauldron Lake. I mean, just doing these panning shots added at least an extra hour onto my playtime this time around, because they don't lose that tense atmosphere through the fog, sound design, and just knowing Taken could be hidden anywhere, but still look so crisp and stunning that you can't help but just stop and look around. As I said in my Demon's Souls remake video, older games may lack in visual fidelity, but when it comes to atmosphere, they can still knock it out of the park, and whenever I get stuck into these remakes or remasters, it always worries me that if they play around with everything too much, they can lose that, and again, that's just not the case here. Not only are the environments a step up, but the light mechanics and lighting as a whole is incredible. The light still feels like it has that impact, especially when the likes of the flare guns, road flares, and flashbang grenades that just decimate the Taken and creating safe places along the way, and the light again is just far more clear than before and less blurred, which is a big improvement. If I had to knock the visuals, it is in regards to some of the characters. Like, what the hell is up with Barry's in-game model? I just don't think they all work, but then also some work in scene, like Barry for example, cutscene model is great, but then don't work in game. It's just not consistent, but mostly the character models do look great. Look, the visual improvements at a glance are subtle. This isn't a full-blown visual remake, and at first, as someone who played Alan Wake numerous times, it didn't scream worth your money. But the longer I played and the more I just sat around panning around these locales I'd spent so many hours in before, the more and more I found myself thinking, this is a worthwhile reason to head back into the world of Alan Wake. Being a remaster, the story is still incredible, the gameplay is still tense, amazing fun, and the DLC is still awesome. If you're a fan of Alan Wake, I'm sure you've already played this remaster, and if you haven't, I definitely recommend giving it a go, especially when it starts getting closer to that Alan Wake 2's release date. And for people who just haven't played Alan Wake, period, go and do it. The game's now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. It runs super smooth, at least it did for me on my PS5. It's one of Remedy's best games in my humble opinion, and I think this is the best way to play Alan Wake for the first time. I really do recommend picking up Alan Wake Remastered, as it's still one of my favorite games of all time, but just, well, more beautiful than before. And whilst I wish they included an American Nightmare remaster in here as well, hopefully they are working on that also, it's still well worth your time and money whenever you decide to pick it up. But now, I'll just sit and wait to finally, after all of these years, play Alan Wake 2. Thank you all so much for watching another retrospective add-on, this time on Alan Wake. I know this was another shorter video. Again, I just didn't want to double dip or repeat myself if most of my thoughts are already out there. I promise the next So I Finally Played won't be another remake or remaster, as I have a few ideas in the works already. If you did enjoy yourself though, be sure to leave the video a like to let me know you, well, like the video. Comment below your thoughts on Alan Wake, remastered or original. Shout out to the channel members Ish, France, Christian, and Cloud for that extra level of support. I truly do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Go give my socials a follow if you fancy at MayorHairBear. Join the Discord server for a chat, and I'll catch you all in the next video.